everyone, this is an online lecture for labor markets. Now this is just a slight extension of demand and supply. It's an online learning topic. So after this lecture video, watching this lecture video, now this is the demand and supply diagram for labor markets. Now this should be very familiar to you. Just take note that there's some final changes. Okay. Now usually when we do demand and supply for a typical good, maybe like rice, maybe like water, it is the people, the regular people who are the consumers who demand for goods and service, right? It is usually the seller, the producers who produce those goods and services. But now we are talking about labor. Okay, labor is labor work. Okay, so now the parties in charge of demand and supply are now reversed. It is now the people who are working, so they control the supply of labor. All right. So by people willingness to work, they are actually supplying labor into the market. All right. So who demand for labor? Firms demand for labor. They need to produce goods and services. They need labor to do that. Okay. So because we are now talking about labor, the parties, the usual parties that's in charge of demand and supplies are now reversed. Okay. So just take note of that. So as usual, the equilibrium when they come together, this will tell us where is the wage rate, okay, of a particular occupation, and this will tell you the employment numbers, how many people are employed in the industry. Okay. Now, as usual, we have movement and shift. Okay, a movement, all right, is caused by a change in the wage rate. Okay, and this will lead to a change in quantity demanded of labor. Okay, so it depends on whether the wage rate is higher or lower. So in this case, when wage rate is falling, you see that there's an increase in the quantity demanded of labor. All right, that means when wage are cheaper, companies want more workers. Okay. Now the following three factors will cause a shift in the demand curve for labor. Now recall what's a shift. A shift means unrelated to the wage rate. Okay, companies want to hire more or less workers. Okay, this is like a non-price determinant in demand and supply. Okay, so what will cause the firm to want to hire more or less people that's unrelated to wages changing? One is the price of the firm's output. So if the firm's output is able to fetch a higher and higher price, the firm may want to hire more people. Okay, or what are the prices of other factors that the firm use to produce? A firm don't just use labor, right? So it can use other factors like capital, like machines. Okay, so it depends on whether those factors are complementing labor or are they substituting labor. All right, and what are the prices of those factors? Okay, and as well as technology changes. Now, some of these factors are we put those in your tutorial. So go and take a look at the tutorial video later where we go through some of these events in greater detail, how this will cause a shift. But we have one example coming up. Now, in this example, we have the price of raw materials becoming cheaper. Now, when you have cheaper raw materials, firms want to produce more. Okay. Now, so when firms want to produce more, naturally they need more workers. So as a result, demand curve for workers will shift to the right. Okay, recall demand for workers is by firms. Okay, so because raw materials are now cheaper, they can produce more, so they want to hire more workers. So demand curve shift to the right. You can see the equilibrium point changing. Okay, so the wage rate will go up. All right, because more workers are needed, so the wage rate will go up. Okay, here we can see that raw materials and labor are complementary. Okay, so when you have more raw materials, firms want to produce more, they will need more workers. Okay, so the effect is complementary. Okay, but it's not always like that for other factors. Okay. Okay, this is our supply curve for labor. Now, upward sloping supply curve, when the wage rate is lousy, very low, we don't feel like working. Quantity of labor, very low, right? So when the wage rate is high, we want to supply more labor. That means we want to work, okay, because the wage rate is higher. So an upward sloping supply curve reflects our supply of labor. Now, factors affecting the supply of labor to a particular job market. What will cause the supply of labor to shift left or right. Now it depends on whether there are more or less qualified people. Okay, um, if there's more qualified people, let's say there's higher graduates in the economy. All right, there's more qualified people. Supply curve will shift to the right. Okay. Now it also depends on whether there are a lot of non-wage benefits. So if there are a lot of non-wage benefits, people might want to work or rejoin the workforce. Okay, and the wage rate and non-wage benefits in alternative jobs. Now remember when you look at labor markets is by industry. So we look at alternative jobs. So if the alternative jobs is offering a worse wage or worse benefit, then more people wants to work for this industry. Okay, because they see that the conditions are quite bad in the alternative jobs. Okay, so for this occupation they want to work harder, so supply curve shift to the right. But if they see that in the alternative job, if the wage rate is high there, okay, and a lot of benefits over there, okay, that's not present here, then the supply of this job will begin to fall because people would rather work somewhere else in the alternative jobs. Okay? Now we have a demand and supply curve coming together. Let's show a shift for the supply curve. All right, let's imagine that there are a lot of people just graduated, all right, from uni. So lots of skilled people coming out into the labor market. So supply curve will shift to the right. And when there's more people joining the workforce, all right, you see that supply curve shift to the right and your equivalent point is now here, okay? And as a result, there's a fall in the wage rate. All right, now imagine we still go back to our demand and supply basics. When there's a lot of supply of something, usually the price will fall. So when you have a lot of people looking for work and the vacancies are the same, the demand curve did not change. Vacancies are the same. So as a result of more people looking for a job, the wages will fall. Okay, but unemployment will rise because there's more people. Okay. Now let's take a look at income inequality. Why some workers will earn a higher pay, why some workers will earn a lower pay. Now we see workers falling into two different categories. One is high skilled, one is low skilled. Okay. Now we assume that the demand for the high skilled workers is always higher. Everybody loves a high skilled worker. Okay, because they are very productive, they're highly skilled, they can do many things. Okay, so everyone loves the high skilled worker. So the demand for high skilled worker is always higher or on the right side. Okay. In comparison, the low skilled workers, they're not very productive, they can't do many things. Okay. So the demand for low skilled workers is low. Okay. So it's always on the left side of the high skilled worker demand curve. Alright. So there's a assumption demand for high skilled workers is high, demand for low skilled workers is low. Now on the supply side, we see that the supply of high skilled workers is lesser. Okay, it's on the left side. Supply of a high skilled worker is on the left side. Now why? It's not easy to be a high skilled worker, right? You need many years of training, many years of studying, and many years of experience. So it's not easy to come by a high skilled worker, right? But there's a lot of low skilled worker. Okay, so low skilled workers supply is higher. All right, more of them around. The high skilled workers, less of them around. Okay, because they're harder to evolve. Okay, so if you put the two together, now let's put all the curves together. The green color is the high skilled worker demand and supply. The blue color is the low skilled worker demand and supply. Now you see that for the high skilled worker demand is higher, but the supply is lesser. People want them and there's very few of them. Now this really pushed the wage rate up really high. Okay, so high skilled workers wage rate is very high. Okay, because of the high demand and low supply. Okay, now imagine any product. Again, we go back to the basics of demand and supply. Any product that is highly demanded yet there's so few of them, all right, the price would usually be very high. So high skilled workers will earn high pay, high wage. Okay, Low skilled workers, there's more of them. Okay, observe the supply curve is on the right. Okay, but nobody really wants low skilled workers. The demand is much lesser. Okay, and yet there's more of them. So this will result in low skilled workers earning a lower pay. All right. Now, the idea of this diagram is to show you the wage differential. Right? We are trying to explain income inequality. Why some people earn high wage, why some people earn lesser wages. Okay? Now, if you look at the quantity, you will observe that some students will say, hey, how come the high skill equilibrium quantity is higher? Didn't we say that there's less of them? Yes, that's just the way that we draw this diagram. Now, if you draw the supply of low skilled workers more, okay, you shift it to the right, the equilibrium quantity will be maybe higher than the high skilled workers. So this quantity is not very important. Okay, it doesn't matter whether your high skilled equilibrium quantity ends up higher or lower than your low skilled equilibrium quantity. It doesn't really matter. Okay, but for some students, it makes more sense for them to have the high skilled lesser. Then you just draw the supply curve, all right, of the low skilled workers more to the right. Okay, then the equilibrium point will move to the right. Okay, then you have a higher equilibrium quantity for low skilled workers, but it's really not critical here. Okay, so usually we ignore this. What is really important is the wage rate. All right, so high skilled workers, high demand, low supply, high wages. Okay, low skilled workers, low demand, high supply, low wages. All right, so remember we should also aspire to be a high skilled worker. Okay, that's the end of our lecture. Make sure you go and watch the tutorial video for this topic. Okay, see you next week.